Recording in progress.
Om-Jnana-Timanasya Chinamsna Sakshamiritam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Nama Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamne Namaste Sarasvata Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Dasatarine. We are reading from chapter 85 from the 10th canto today. Lord Krishna instructs Vasudeva and retrieves Devaki's sons. So we'll start with reading verse 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Badaranai Uvacha Ahai Kadatmaja Papto Kitipada Bivandano Vasudeva Binantyaha Pritya Sankarsanasyuta. Shri Badarayani said, one day the two sons of Vasudeva, Sankarsan and Asyuta, came to pay his respects bowing down at his feet. Vasudeva greeted them with great affection and spoke to them. So, in Krishna book, we have a quote about a Vedic custom. It is a Vedic custom that the junior members of the family should offer respects to elderly persons every morning. The children or the disciples especially should offer their respects to the parents or the spiritual master in the morning. In pursuance of this Vedic principle, Lord Krishna and Balaram used to offer their obeisances to their father, Vasudeva, along with his wives. One day after having returned from the sacrificial performances at Kurukshetra, when Lord Krishna and Balaram went to offer their respects to Vasudeva, Vasudeva took the opportunity of appreciating the exalted position of his two sons. So the next verse is explaining what is the mood of Vasudeva. He has forgotten his natural Vatsalya ras and is going into a very reverential mood. He's going to praise Krishna and he's going to explain how the whole creation comes from him, as we find in the 3rd canto. We will receive a summary here of the 3rd canto from Vasudeva. He has been influenced by the sages who were praising Krishna, accepting him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now text 2. Yeah. Having heard the great sages' words concerning the power of his two sons and having seen their valorous deeds, Vasudeva became convinced of their divinity. Thus addressing them by name, he spoke to them as follows. Text 3. Vasudeva said, O Krishna, Krishna, best of the yogis, O eternal Sankarshan, I know that you are personally the source of universal creation and the ingredients of creation as well. So Vasudeva is going to instruct us about the creation. So, text 4. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead who manifests as the Lord of both nature and the Creator of nature, Mahavishnu. Everything that comes into existence, however, and whenever it does so, is created within you, by you, from you, for you, and in relation to you. So we have here the purport Can someone read the highlighted section at the end of the purport? It's the last two sentences.
But although the language but although language thus seems to indicate the activity of many separate agents in the manifest creation, the deeper truth is that all grammatical forms refer first of all to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, Vasudeva makes this point by glorifying his two exalted sons in terms of the different grammatical forms.
So, thank you. Vasudev, in your Sanskrit very well. That so now that there is a relationship between everything that exists and Krishna. And I want to go with you now to the I think that's the seventh canto. 7, 9, 20. This is Prahlad Maharaj's prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev. Can someone read the translation of this verse, which is on the screen? My dear Lord.
My dear Lord, everyone in this material world is under the modes of material nature, being influenced by goodness, passion, and ignorance. Everyone, from the greatest personality, Lord Brahma, down to the small ant, works under the influence of these three modes. Therefore, everyone in this material world is influenced by your energy. The cause for which they work, the place where they work, the time when they work, the matter due to which they work, the goal of life they have considered final, the process of obtaining this goal, are all nothing but manifestation of your energy. Indeed, since the energy and the energetic are identical, all of them are but manifestations of you.
All right. So whatever you see is from Krishna and is for his pleasure. So we should give it to Krishna. So no matter what you are doing, there is a relationship. Everything is due to Krishna and it is for Krishna, as it is his energy. This is how to see Krishna everywhere. And that was stressed in the fourth verse of the Chatur Sloki of the Bhagavatam. Etavate vajichyasam tattva jihna sunatmana atmana amvaya vyatere kabyam yatsat sarvata sarvada. A person who is searching after the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. So you should search for the absolute truth everywhere, at all times. Devotional service is applicable everywhere. Text 5. O transcendental Lord, from yourself you created this entire variegated universe, and then you entered within it your personal form as a super soul. In this way, O unborn supreme soul, as the life force and the conscience of everyone, you maintain the creation. So this verse mentions Ma Vishnu, Garbhodakasha Vishnu, Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. Yeah. Can someone read the purport, please?
When creating the material universe, the Lord expands himself as the Paramatma or Super Soul and accepts the creation as his universal body. No material body has any reason for existing without some Jiva, soul, desiring it for his enjoyment. And no jiva can independently maintain a body without the Paramatma accompanying him there for guidance. The Vaishnava Acharyas, in their commentaries on the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, explain that even before Brahma is born from the lotus navel of Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, he first accepts the whole material energy, the Mahat Tattva, as his body. Thus, Brahma is the Jiva embodied by the universe, and Vishnu is the Paramatma who joins him. Brahma must organize the specific manifestations of creation, but he cannot begin to do so until Lord Vishnu expands himself again into the subtle energy of action, which is the Sutra Tattva or original vital air, and also into the creative energy of consciousness, Buddhi Tattva.
So thank you. So nothing could change Nanda's prema, but Vasudev, he got influenced by these sages. Therefore, he's speaking these verses here. So, text 6. Whatever potencies the life air and other elements of universal creation exhibit are actually all personal energies of the Supreme Lord, for both life and matter are subordinate to him and dependent on him, and also different from one another. Thus everything active in the material world is set into motion by the Supreme Lord. So everything is his energy, and he puts everything in motion. This at every level. The glance of the Lord has to be there. So we heard that in the previous cantos. Now, in the purport, there an analogy of the velocity of an arrow is explained. Can someone read the purport?
Prana is the vital air of life, a more subtle element than the ordinary air we can touch. And because prana is so subtle, finer than the tangible manifestations of creation, it is sometimes considered the ultimate source of everything. But even subtle energies such as prana depend for their functional capacity on the supremely subtle Paramatma. That is the idea Vasudeva expresses here by the word paratantrayat, because of dependence. Just as the velocity of an arrow is derived from the strength of the bowman who shoots it, so all subordinate energies depend on the power of the Supreme Lord. Furthermore, even when various subtle causes have been empowered with their capacity to act, they cannot act in concert without the Supreme Person's coordinating direction. As Lord Brahma states in his description of creation in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, O Narada, best of the transcendentals, the form of the body cannot manifest as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind, and modes of nature, are not assembled. Thus, when all these became assembled by the force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly came into being by accepting both the primary and the secondary cause of creation.
Thank you. So you have that analogy of the velocity of an arrow here that was given here just before. Just as the velocity of an arrow is derived from the strength of the bowman who shoots it, so all subordinate energies depend on the power of the Supreme Lord. So that is, yes, the essence of this purport that we will This is further explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Can someone read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on text 6?
But the prana and jiva are well known as the maintainers of the universe, not me. This verse answers that. Prana and other items, pranadi is mentioned because prana consists of many subcategories. Not only are prana and jiva famous as the maintainers of the universe, but they are also famous as the creators, Vishashram, but their energy is from the Supreme Lord, Prashya, because they are dependent in nature, just as the arrow's power to pierce an object is actually the power of the person firing the arrow. But the prana and jiva depend upon the presiding deities, so why should one conclude that they are dependent on the Lord? Certainly, by their similarity of the presiding deities with prana and jiva. As the prana and jiva, action and knowledge gathered in the senses, are material, so the presiding deities are also material. Therefore, all these energies are under the Supreme Lord, because he is composed of consciousness. The prana and jiva, as well as the presiding deities, are material, and dull material is known to be dependent on consciousness. But if prana and jiva do not have any power of their own, then how is it that they produce action? The action is just movement of prana and buddhi. The movement of the action and knowledge senses, but does not indicate that they have inherent power, just as the arrow moves, not by its own power, but by the power of the bowman.
Interesting. So, all matter is dependent on consciousness. Otherwise, nothing happens. Anand Kaur Sundarpur, you want to ask something or comment?
Well, I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because in the text, it 4 also, of this chapter, towards the end, it is mentioned about the Sutra Tattva and Buddhi Tattva. Now, Sutra Tattva, generally we hear it is in Mahatattva in mode of passion. But what is this Buddhi Tattva? I was not very clear. So, can you comment more on Buddhi Tattva? Towards the end of this purport of verse 4, text 4.
You see we go find here. Text 4. Where is that mentioned?
Just one minute, I'll see. Sorry, well, it is in text 5. Please forgive me, it's text 5.
Sutra Tattva at the end here.
Yes, Maharaj, the last one.
Brahma is a jiva embodied by the universe, and Vishnu is the Paramatma who joins him. Brahma must organize the specific manifestations of creation, but he cannot do so until Vishnu expands himself into the subtle energy of action, which is the Sutra Sattva, or the vital air, and also in the creative energy of consciousness, Buddhi Tattva. It seems two subtle energies necessary for the creation, the subtle energy of action and the creative energy of consciousness, Buddhi Tattva. It's expansion. Yeah.
While in the third canto, it's like false ego is considered Mahatattva in mode of ignorance. Sutra Tattva, later on 11th canto, Krishna writes as Mahatattva in mode of passion. But this Buddhi Tattva, this I am reading here only, I never read before. So I am little inquisitive about it.
Yeah, Buddhi Tattva, energy of consciousness, is mentioned here. That energy of consciousness, that Consciousness is described as an energy, and consciousness is the energy of the jiva. But also, consciousness is the energy of the Paramatma. And by the consciousness of Paramatma, everything is happening. Because consciousness, as we just said, is controlling matter. So that's the essence of this. That, yes, the energy of consciousness comes from Krishna. It's described in Bhagavad Gita, Kshatrajya. There are two Kshatrajyas. One is a super soul, and so he is a knower. He's conscious of everything. And through his consciousness, the creation is taking place. This Buddhi Tattva. Buddhi means also intelligence, consciousness of intelligence. We see, there's an intelligence behind the creation coming through this Buddhi. This Buddhi Tattva is required. You see the DNA in every cell, and this DNA has a certain structure. There's a software of the gross matter. And that software is written by this Buddhi Tattva, energy of consciousness. Yeah. Anyway, it's a big topic, Anand Karsandapur. That something specific you want to know about?
Maharaj, actually, in this recently, the Chakravarti Pal's purport which you read, it was looking like a metal element, not like a spiritual element of like Lord. Certainly, we know it is Krishna's energy, but it looks like a material energy. So,
The creative energy of consciousness, that's interesting. Creation exists only in the material world. But it exists in the material world because the consciousness of the Lord is behind it. So, without the consciousness of the Lord, no creation. But that's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Because when we go to this text, because someone asked me a question a few days ago. He wrote me an email in it. He said, how should we study the Bhagavatam? And I quoted him this verse that gives the qualities of a spiritual master. A spiritual master has realized the meaning of the scriptures by deliberation. So it's a process. We hear the Bhagavatam, best in association of devotees, then we deliberate on it. What is the meaning? Understanding the meaning and then deliberating means what's the practical value for me in my life, how I'm going to apply it, and then you apply it, and then you get realization. So it's a process that, and how to study the Bhagavatam. Bhakti Sharma, he said to all his disciples, and we cannot follow it, but that was his instruction. Every day you have in the temple the Bhagavatam class. You are supposed to hear every day the Bhagavatam class. And the day before, you memorize the verse for the next day, Sanskrit and English, every day. That was his instruction. So that if you memorize it before and the next day you have the class, it's going deep. And that's the purpose of study of the scriptures, because otherwise we become like, when it's superficial, we don't get much. It's like a mouse who is running in a trap, and it's not making advancement. It's running a lot, but that's so we have to be there with our consciousness and become absorbed in the Bhagavatam and deliberate on it. That's very good. Thank you for bringing that up. Let's continue with text 8. Now we have here, and that's interesting, Vasudeva is going indirectly to quote Bhagavad Gita. That it says in verse 8 that my Lord, you are water, and also its taste and its capacities to quench thirst and sustain life. You exhibit your potencies through the manifestation as the air, or as bodily warmth, vitality, mental power, physical strength, endeavor, and movement. That so it says, yes, you are water. I think we missed verse 7. So I skipped a verse. It says, the glow of the moon, the brilliance of fire, the radiance of the sun, the twinkling stars, the flash lightning, the permanence of mountains, and the aroma and sustaining power of the earth, all these are actually you. Srila Prabhupada quotes here Svetasvatara Upanishad, that there in the spiritual sky the sun does not shine, nor does the moon, the stars of lighting, we know them. What to speak of ordinary fire? It is by the reflection of the spiritual sky's effulgence that everything else gives light, and thus its substance. Through its radiance, the entire universe becomes luminous. And then it quotes 15:12 of Bhagavad Gita. The splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of this whole world comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. And that's text 7 here, but in text 8 he quotes the next verse of the Bhagavad Gita, this the taste of water. Bhagavad Gita, yeah. That's you are the taste of water, and also its taste and its capacities to quench thirst and sustain life. You exhibit your potencies through the manifestation of the air as bodily warmth, vitality, mental power, physical strength, endeavor, and movement. So I enter into each planet, Bhagavad Gita says, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life of all vegetables, which gives the taste. That so he's quoting Bhagavad Gita. So Lord Krishna, what's the principle? Lord Krishna is empowering everything. So how can we be separated from Krishna? That's the point. We cannot be separated. If we analyze the air in our body, then we can see how Krishna is there. Verse 9 speaks then about sound and ether. Vasudeva becomes really philosophical. You are the directions in their accommodating capacity, the all-pervading ether and elemental sound residing within it. You are the primeval, unmanifested form of sound, the first syllable Om, an audible speech by which sound as words acquires particular references. So it's about sound and ether. Can someone read the purport, please?
In accordance with the general process of creation, speech always becomes audible in stages, which proceed from subtle inner impulse to outward expression. These stages are mentioned in the mantras of the Rig Veda. 1.164.45, it says, discriminating Brahmanas known of four progressive stages of language. Three of these remain hidden within the heart of imperceptible vibrations, while the fourth stage is what people ordinarily understand as speech.
Yeah, this is quite complicated, but from the Uddhav Gita there is a little more explanation about these four levels of, of speech. I do not remember the verse, but we will discuss that later in the Uddhav Gita. That so in text 10 we hear about the buddhi and the senses now. That you have the power of the senses to reveal their objects. The senses presiding demigods and the sanction these demigods give for sensory activity. You have the capacity of the intelligence for decision making and the living being's ability to remember things accurately. So buddhi arises from ahankar combined with the mode of passion. We have heard before that. So, can someone read a small purport?
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that whenever one of the material senses is involved with its object, the presiding demigod of that particular sense organ must give his sanction. Acharya Vishwanath Chakravarti explains the word anusmriti in this verse in its higher sense as one's recognition of himself as an eternal spirit soul.
So, yes, this verse is about remembering. So, what is the most important thing to remember? I'm an eternal spirit soul. Then, text 11. You have false ego in the mode of ignorance, which is the source of the physical elements. False ego in the mode of passion, which is the source of the body senses. False ego in the mode of goodness, which is the source of the demigods. And unmanifest total material energy, which underlies everything. That text 12. You are the one indestructible entity among all the destructible things of this world, like the underlying substance that is seen to remain unchanged while the things made from it undergo transformation. So Vasudeva quite learned. The modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, together with all their functions, become directly manifest within you, the Supreme Absolute Truth, by the arrangements of your Yoga Maya. Can someone read the purport?
Vasudeva's description of how the Supreme Lord expands himself into the products of the three material modes may possibly be misunderstood to imply that he is touched by the modes, or even that he is subject to destruction. To negate these misunderstandings, Vasudeva states here that the three modes and their products function by the arrangement of the Lord's creative energy. Yogamaya, who is always completely under his control. Thus, the Lord is never tainted in the least by any material contact.
Can someone also read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport?
If I am Pradhan, then I will be subjected to change just as the Pradhan transforms into objects of this world. As Pradhan is the cause of the universe. The counter argument is given in two verses. The three gunas, which are also called Pradhan, and which undergo transformations such as Mahatattva, Vrityaha, all of these have been produced by your inconceivable spiritual energy, Yogamaya, within you, who are beyond the gunas, Pare. They are actually within you. They have been produced under your glance.
Yes. So the The counter-argument here given, because one can say, yes, the Lord is Pradhan, the unmanifested material energy. But no, that because Pradhan is changing, that and it's changing under the glance of the Supreme Lord. So, and the Lord is the unchanging element. So the transformations of the Mahatattva have been produced by Krishna's inconceivable spiritual energy Yoga Maya. The modes of nature are coming from Krishna, and these modes transform by the arrangement of your Yoga Maya. 14. Thus, these created entities, transformation of material nature, do not exist except when material nature manifests them within you, at which time you also manifest with them. But aside such periods of creation, you stand alone as the transcendent or reality. So that was 14. Huh? Yeah. So Krishna is always there, before, during, and after. That's the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam Chatur Sloka. I'm there before, during, and after. It's all in me. Text 50. But we read first purport of 14. Can someone read the purport?
When the, when the universe is wound up at the time of its periodic annihilation, all the inert objects and bodies of living beings that hitherto were manifested by the Lord's Maya become disconnected from his sight. Then, since he maintains no association with them during the period of universal dissolution, they in fact no longer exist. In other words, material manifestations have real functional existence only when the Lord turns his attention to the creation and maintenance of the material cosmos. The Lord is never within these objects in any material sense, but he does mercifully pervade them all as the impersonal Brahman. And as the Paramatma, he enters within every atom and also accompanies the Jiva, soul, in their individual embodiments. As the Lord describes in his own words in verses of Bhagavad Gita, Maya tadam edam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina mat sthani sarvabhutani nacham tesu avasthita. नाच मत स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगम ऐश्वरम भूत भृन नच भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूत भावना. By me in my unmanifest form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities and although I am everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation.
Now, this is very bewildering for our material intelligence, but there is a verse in the 11th canto that explains, as long as the Lord glances on the creation, it will continue to exist. But he's always glancing, he's maintaining by glancing. 15. Guna pravaha etasmin abudastva kiratmana katim shuksman abodena samsaranita karmabi. So they are truly ignorant, who, while imprisoned within the ceaseless flow of this material world's qualities, fail to know you, the Supreme Soul of all that be, as their ultimate sublime destination. Because of their ignorance, the entanglement of material work forces such souls to wander in the cycle of birth and death. So now he's talking about the Baddha Jiva, who is stuck in this material world. Can someone read a short purport, please?
A soul who forgets his true identity as the servant of God is sent to this world to be imprisoned in the cessation of material bodies, wrongly identifying himself with these bodies Such a conditioned soul suffers the consequent distress of karmic action and reaction. Vasudeva, as a compassionate Vaishnava, laments for the suffering conditioned soul, whose unhappiness, the result of ignorance, can be remedied by knowledge of the principle of devotional service to Lord Krishna.
Yes, so before it was about the creation and the material energy, and now it's in relation to the jiva. It is, we find that also in the Dasamula Tattva about Krishna and about his energies. So this is Bada Jiva, the jiva stuck in this world, and the next verse is about the liberated jiva. By good fortune, a soul may obtain a healthy human life, an opportunity rarely achieved. But if he is nonetheless deluded about what is best for him, O Lord, your illusory Maya will cause him to waste his entire life. So we heard now about liberated and conditioned soul. Text 17. You keep this whole world bound by the ropes of affection, and thus when people consider their material bodies, they think this is me. And when they consider their progeny and other relations, they think these are mine. This is why we are here. We are thinking of this is me and these are mine. Text 18. You are not our sons, but the very lords of material nature and its creator, Mahavishnu. As you yourself have told us, you have descended to rid the earth of the rulers who are a heavy burden upon her. So here we get one explanation why Vasudeva is talking like this. Can someone read the purport?
According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, in this verse, Vasudeva offers himself and his wife as excellent examples of those who are materially deluded. Although at the time of his birth in Kamsa's prison, Lord Krishna told Vasudeva and Devaki that his mission was to rid the earth of unwanted Kshatriyas. Still, his two parents could not avoid thinking of him as their helpless son who needed protection from King Kamsa. In reality, of course, both Vasudeva and Devaki were participating in the divine pastime of the Lord's birth under the perfect direction of his internal energy. Only out of transcendental humility does Vasudeva criticize himself in this way.
Hare Krishna. Humility. Therefore, friend of the distressed, I now approach your lotus feet for shelter. The same lotus feet that dispel all fear of worldly existence for those who have surrendered to them. Enough with hankering for sense enjoyment, which makes me identify with this mortal body, and think of you, the Supreme, as my child. The short purport, can someone read these two sentences?
Srila Jiva Goswami suggests that Vasudeva condemns himself here for thinking of trying to gain special opulences because he is the father of the Supreme Lord. Thus Vasudeva contrasts himself with Nanda, the king of Vraja, who was satisfied with pure love of God and nothing else.
So that's the difference between Vasudeva and Nanda. Nanda Maharaj will never say, you are not my son, you are the creator. From Brihad Bhagavatamrita, 3rd volume, that there I read, let my praise Krishna smooth as an ordinary friend, with thus away with respect and reverence, and expand their pure love for him. Some Vaishnavas may remain doubtful, thinking love of God can develop to its full potential only by specific knowledge of the Lord's greatness, not by conceptions of him in worldly relationships such as that of a son. But in fact, such devotees may argue that seeing God in such a relationship is a serious error. In this prayer, Vasudeva begs to be relieved from the delusion that compels him of imagining that God is his son. It may be advised, you are very happy, but he counters the idea by describing his pitiable confusion in which, out of greed for sense enjoyment, he thinks that he is his body and that the Lord is his son. There is a verse in the Vishnu Purana in which Vasudeva tells Krishna, both Devaki and I are bewildered into loving you like our own child. Vasudeva feels he should be the butt of jokes for daring to consider the Supreme Lord as his son. Narada Muni explains this exceptional attitude and behavior, even though they appear to follow the pattern of ordinary relationships, mundane relationships, expands the limits of the most perfect love of Krishna. The key understanding how this kind of devotional service works means to accept the Lord as your son. It is to comprehend that it does away with the restrictions of respect, fear, reverential faith towards the Supreme Lord. So that's not there. Awe and reverence may be indispensable in Vaikuntha, but they only inhibit the expression of prema between Krishna and his intimate devotees. Sri Vasudeva was lamenting because he had focused his attention on the idea that the Lord was his son, rather than simply acting affection for him like Sri Nanda and Yasoda. Or attentively, Vasudeva, as an extremely humble Vaishnava, suffered from the self-dissatisfaction that naturally arises when bhakti becomes intense. He is of course a perfect devotee. He has all the Lord's blessings. So we have many different understandings of different devotees. Why is Vasudeva saying to Krishna, you are not my son? Text 20. Indeed, while still in the maternity room, you told us that you, the unborn Lord, had already been born several times as our son in previous ages. After manifesting each of these transcendental bodies to protect your own principles of religion, you then made them unmanifest, thus appearing and disappearing like a cloud. O supremely glorified, O all-pervading Lord, who can understand the mystic, deluding potency of your opulent expansions? Can someone read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur?
I am the Supreme Lord, and I became your son. So how can this be entanglement or repeated birth for you? I am the maternity.
In the maternity room, that's an error.
In the maternity room, you told us, have appeared from the pair of you two repeatedly Anu Yugam as Sutapa and Prishni, then as Kashyapa and Aditi, and now as Vasudeva and Devaki, creating all those bodies for us. You become our son. But being unattached like the sky, you give us up. You do not stop being born. Therefore, you can understand the powers, Vibhuti, Mayam of the Supreme Lord, Bhumna.
So we give a interesting.
Thinking.
Yeah, thank you. Sukadev Goswami said, having heard his father's words, the Supreme Lord, leader of the Sattvatas, replied in a gentle voice as he bowed his head in humility and smiled. Can someone read this purport, please? Srila Jiva Goswami.
Jiva
Goswami
Goswami.
describes what Lord Krishna thought after hearing his father glorify him. Vasudeva has been honored with the eternal role of my father, something even demigods like Brahma cannot aspire for. Therefore, he shouldn't be absorbed in thinking of my ungodly aspects. Moreover, his reverence greatly embarrasses me. It was to avoid this very situation that after killing Kamsa, I made a special effort to reinforce their pure parental love for me and Balram. But now, unfortunately, the statements of these sages threaten to revive some of the Vasudev's and Devaki's previous awareness of my majesty.
Hare Krishna. So it happened once before that now Krishna is going to explain to them. Text 22. Yeah. The Supreme Lord said, my dear father, I consider your statements appropriate since you have explained the various categories of existence by referring to us, your sons. So, posing as Vasudev's dependent son, Lord Krishna expresses his gratitude for his father's edifying instructions. Now Srila Prabhupada Father Vasudeva was emphasizing the difference. Srila Prabhupada said, because there's a quote from Krishna book. I will try to find this quote from Krishna book. That's just a moment. Just a moment. So let's see. I can find it. Krishna book. No, anyway. I will send you the reference later. So text 20. This was text 22, 23. Not only I, but also you, along with my respected brother, and these residents of Dwarka should all be considered in the same philosophical light, O best of the Yadus. Indeed, we include all that exist, both moving and non-moving. Text 24. The Supreme Spirit Paramatma is indeed one. He is self-luminous and eternal, transcendental and devoid of all material qualities. But through the agency of the very modes he has created, the one Supreme Truth manifest as many among the expansions of those modes. So we are going through the entire Dasa Mula, the Asintya Beda Beda Tattvam, text 25. Elements of either air, fire, water, and earth become visible, invisible, minute, or extensive, as they manifest in various objects. Similarly, the Paramatma, though one, appears to be many. And now, in text 26, Krishna speaks about duality. Sukadev Goswami said, O king, hearing these instructions spoken by the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva became freed from all ideas of duality. Satisfied as heart, he remained silent. So what is the duality here? It is, yes, you are not my sons. That's the duality we are speaking about here. That we'll read two more verses. At that time, best of the Kurus, the universally worshipped Devaki took the opportunity to address her two sons, Krishna and Balaram. Previously, she had heard with astonishment that they had brought their spiritual master's sons back from death. Now, thinking of her own sons, who had been murdered by Kamsa, she felt great sorrow, and thus with tear-filled eyes, she beseeched Krishna and Balaram. Can someone read the purport, please?
Vasudev's love for Krishna had been disturbed because his awareness of Krishna's opulences conflicted with seeing him as his son. In a different way, Devaki's love was somewhat distracted by her lamentation for her dead sons. So Krishna arranged to relieve her of the mistaken idea that anyone else but him was actually her son. Since Devaki is known to be worshipped by all great souls, her show of material affection must actually have been effect of Lord's Yoga Maya, who increases the pleasure of his pastimes. Thus, in text 54, Devaki will be described as Mohita Mayaya Vishnuho, bewildered by the internal energy of Lord Vishnu.
Yes, the bewilderment of Devaki is in regard to her son and her previous sons, to her 6 previous sons. She is bewildered by her affection for them as well as for Krishna. It should be only for Krishna, but she is bewildered for affection for the sons too. That is what we understand here. So we will now have a break for 15 minutes. It's 5 o'clock till 5:15, 15 minutes, and then we will continue with hearing the second part of the pastimes, which is about the retrieving Devaki's sons. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Recording stopped.